Hello, everybody, and welcome to this session of Roots Tech 2017. The room is full and packed today. Is everybody having a good time? The energy here at Roots Tech has just been marvelous this week. I've spent the past couple days talking with hundreds and hundreds of people, and there's so much being shared, there's so much learning going on here. And we've got a wonderful opportunity today to talk about, in this lecture, we're going to be comparing the big four genealogy websites: Ancestry.com, FamilySearch, Findmypast, and MyHeritage. I am Sunny Morton. I'm a contributing editor over at Louise Cooke's GenealogyGems.com. Thank you for that. We have a podcast and a website, and we do a lot to reach out to our fans around the world and teach them more about what tools will help them do their genealogy now and well. I'm also a contributing editor at Family Tree Magazine, and the author of the Story of My Life, which is a life story writing journal to help you bring your memories back to life or someone else's and put together your life story. But today we're going to be talking specifically about these four websites. And why do we even have four websites? It's because you're all part of a growing community around the world. Genealogy was put a couple of years ago at a $2+ billion industry that was projected to grow by next year to nearly $3 billion. So there's a lot of space in this community to have different websites like the ones we're going to talk about today, different resources, because we all have lots of different needs. And in fact, that's one of the questions that I get the most often is, which one do I need? When it comes to these big four genealogy websites, it's easy when you're getting started to be a little intimidated, a little confused. Well, until I'm a member and can get into to see what the site is like, how do I even know what I need? So I'm going to change that question on you just a little bit today. And instead of saying, which one do I need, I'd like you to ask you to consider, which one do I need now? And to explain why, I'd like to use an analogy. How many of you in here are the primary grocery shoppers for your families? A lot of grocery shoppers in the room. I am also. And let's say in my town, there are 4 different choices for doing my grocery shopping. And let's say that the very first one is George Walker's, and it's a great place to get all my basics. There's no name brands necessarily, no frills. I might be picking things up off of a dusty shelf. I might bag the groceries myself, but I know I'm always going to get a great value, and I'm going to walk out of there with 80% of what I need. And then maybe I'll do some of my grocery shopping across the street at Thomas Lynette's so that I make sure that I get my husband's favorite brand of peanut butter, which the first store doesn't have. So I'll go across the street and get some things there. It's a little bit more expensive, but I'm going to get some of the things that I need that I won't find at that first place. And there are a few perks to the shopping at this store. The experience is a little nicer. But let's say I really want an upscale shopping experience. I want the doorman at the elevator. I want someone carrying my groceries and watching my children while I shop. So I'm going to go, yes, we do. Sometimes it's the only break you get in the day. So I'm going to go to Scott's downtown because they've got that kind of an upscale shopping experience, and that's what I'm looking for. They're going to carry my luxury items, the things that I really want when I'm throwing a really good party. And then every once in a while, though, not even Scott's has the things that I need for that particular dish. So I'm going to head across town to Henry Afu's Oriental store so that I can get that specialty item that I'm looking for. So as you can see, each of these stores has some value to it, and a savvy shopper might choose one for some everyday shopping, but would also want to know what's out there at the other 3 places so that when their needs change, they know where to go. Well, that's a clear analogy to what I'm talking about today. You might, in fact, choose one site that you're doing your everyday researching at right now, because right now, in your family search for family, you're going to be having your needs met at this one site most of the time. But you want to know what's out there at the other 3 sites for when your needs change. And when we start talking about how we compare these sites, there's a lot to compare. And maybe that's why you often don't see them all put side by side. There are so many features at these websites that you might not even have considered. So many different things you can be looking at. So today, we're going to have a bottom line. What will help you build your tree right now? We're not going to look at bells and whistles, a lot of the fancier things. We're going to look at some real basics today. Because when it comes down to it, your tree is unique. And what works for me might not work for you, might not work for somebody else, and your needs may change. You may suddenly find that adoption pops up on your family tree, and you're going to need to change your strategy and start using some DNA research. You may find somebody has suddenly come from Germany on one of your lines, and you're going to need those records that are at a different site than you've been using so far. You may find an unknown surname on one line, or an completely unknown identity, and again, you may need to change your strategy every time you start a new research session or identify a new relative. So that's why this lecture. So as I'm talking today, you may already have come in here with some brand loyalty, and I'm guessing some of you already have some real strong brand loyalty, and might even be saying in your head, you tell me, give me one good reason why I should switch from here to there. And I'm not telling you to switch necessarily anything. I would like to ask you to keep an open mind, because when it comes down to it, especially if price is really the considering factor in limiting you to one website, free access may be available to you for each of these websites. All of the sites that I'm talking about today have some overlap in features and in record content. It is impossible. I spent the entire month of December trying to do a full apples-to-apples comparison of each of these websites, and the bottom line is you can't fully, and you'll see why in just a minute. The sites are all moving targets. We've even had changes this week that have caused my lecture to be updated. So while your syllabus that I submitted several weeks ago is still fairly on target, things change all the time. So keep listening for things that are new today. And then the bottom line, another bottom line, is that no website has everything you'll need all the time. So you will want to be aware. The things that I'm going to focus on today, because we have a very limited time and we have 4 different sites to talk about, so there's a lot here we could talk about, I'm going to focus on historical records at each website. I'm going to focus on user-submitted trees and tree profiles. We're going to talk about DNA. And then, of course, I'll give you a cost breakdown too, because everybody cares about the cost. So in terms of historical records, here's where I'm talking about the older documents that you'll find your family history in, old censuses, vital records, city directories, even yearbooks with wonderful pictures, things like that. There's some wonderful historical records on all of these websites. So when we break down the numbers, though, this is what they look like, and this is in terms of the billions. So we have gotten to the point where we are talking about record content and online in terms of the billions. And here we've got this figure for Ancestry.com is adjusted. They claim 19 billion records on their site. As best I can tell, this also includes user-submitted tree profiles, which we're not talking about in this particular slide. So that's the best answer I could get from Ancestry. So I've gone ahead and adjusted that for the purposes of this slide, trying to compare apples to apples. But again, each of these websites, when they tell me how many records they have, if there's a birth record, let's say, and there's a child, and there's a mom, and there's a dad, and there's maybe somebody else mentioned in the birth record too, how many records is that? It depends on who you ask. So as you can see, it becomes a little more problematic even to answer a simple question like how many records are on your site, how do you count a record, what qualifies, those kinds of things. So this, as best I can do, you've got it, and you've got plenty of fine print in your handouts that are available through your app and online to help you make more sense of what these numbers mean. So all of the sites that we're talking about today have common historical records on them. Some of the same things. For example, there are a lot of free records out there online already, and each of the sites has those as part of the records that you can search there because they're free, and so they can put them on their site as well. Each one of these sites also, when you search, they're also going to point to certain content that's at other websites. It will tell you that, it will give credit to those other sites, but in your search results, you're also going to have this sort of one-stop shopping experience, which some people really like to say, now I don't have to go search all those other sites, maybe like Find a Grave or Billion Graves or some of the others. Now I can see what's there by searching here in one spot. So also, the 3 commercial sites that I'm talking about today, and these are Ancestry and Findmypast and MyHeritage, each of these has records partnerships with FamilySearch and has received at least some record content from FamilySearch, some of which overlaps. So when it comes down to it, all of them do have some of this common content, some of which they've received from FamilySearch, and some of which they've sourced through other measures too. I want to give them full credit for all the work they do to bring these records to their sites. An example of the common content that you'll find on all 4 websites, they all have England's censuses to 1911. They all have enormous birth and marriage and death indexes for the UK, although the specifics of each of those collections might vary just a little bit. For the US, all 4 websites have the federal census population schedules that are all available through 1940. So you'll find them all there and searchable. You'll also find a free data set, the Social Security Death Index. That's also there. And several vital records collections, which are these birth, marriage, and death records. They're all over at all 4 sites. Now, the locations and time periods and coverage of each vary. Some might have an index to these records. Others might have the images as well. Some might have them for a different time period or may cover only a set of counties and not the entire state. And so you do have to dig in and look at what each website has. The good news, and I'm giving you a lot of generalities because your ancestors all came from a different part of the world than mine did at a different time, and so you need to ask these questions for yourself. So in the handout, I have given you the instructions for each website at the bottom of page 1, how to search the sites for record content. You don't have to be a member to do this. You can go in and look and say, does this site have such and such? Or what does this site have for this place and time period? And you can stroll down those aisles yourselves and see what's there. So the geographic record strengths, and I'll leave this slide up for just a minute so you can really soak it in. It's such a big world that it's hard to convey this in the short amount of time period we have, but I can at least tell you that Ancestry claims coverage of 80 countries around the world, and it is specifically strong for the countries that are listed here, so strong that they do sell country-level membership subscriptions to the US, Canada, Germany, France, Italy, Sweden, Australia, Mexico, and the UK. So FamilySearch claims coverage of 96 countries, particularly strong in the US, but also particularly strong globally. FamilySearch is the one partner, as I mentioned, that's not commercial, and their mission is to facilitate family history research throughout the world, whether or not people in those areas can afford to spend money to do it. As a company that doesn't need to make money helping people do genealogy, therefore, they're the strongest when you go to areas of Central and South America. And in most parts of Asia and Africa, often the FamilySearch will be a good place to check to find records from these places. So Findmypast has an identified strength, and you might say, well, that number 7 is really low, but it's because they are specifically focused on this one particular region of the world. England, Scotland, Wales, Ireland, and they've now branched out into former territories of the British Empire in the US, in Australia, New Zealand. They have growing content for that to reach out to those folks whose ancestors came from the heart of the British Empire, because if we go back there, then we're going to want to see what they've got. So they cover those 7 countries very deeply, and I'll give you better examples in a little bit. MyHeritage claims coverage of all countries throughout the world. They are particularly strongest in Europe, specifically in the Scandinavian countries, in Germany and England, and they also have a focus on gathering information about global Jewish genealogy. The company is headquartered in Israel, so that's a real interest and a strength for theirs, and it's a niche that they have developed for themselves. So as far as geographic record coverage, that's as general and sweeping strokes as I can give you, and you can go back into your handout and go in and look at each of these sites yourselves and see what they have for particular regions. So let's talk about user-submitted family trees. That's the next feature that I'd like to cover in this lecture today and compare among the 4 websites. User-submitted family trees are wonderful. It's the trees that everybody else puts up, and they have made public so that others can search them. They're wonderful for cousin connections, to reach out and meet new cousins, to develop relationships if you're interested, to collaborate on your research, to share stories, photos, artifacts. We all know that different types of stories and photos and other things come down through different branches of the family just a little bit differently, don't they? So that's a really wonderful way to connect with other kin, is to look out there in other people's trees and see who else is doing research on your common ancestors. User-submitted trees can also be a great resource if you're stuck and you can't get any further on your family tree. You can go look at other people and say, well, what do you have for this particular person? What have you found? This is something you do with caution, because they don't necessarily know any more than you do, and they may have copied somebody else's work who didn't necessarily know any more than they do. But what you're looking for are hints and helps that can guide you to the next level of your own research. So if they've got a name and a date that you haven't seen before, and you look to see if they've cited a source there, well, have they got a source? Oh, they've got a record there that I didn't even know about. That's marvelous. That's a great use of a user-submitted tree to help your research. Otherwise, use them with caution and investigate them yourself when you find them. But user-submitted trees are fabulous. So as far as individual profiles on these trees, so how many ancestors are on trees at each of these websites? We've got the breakdown here, again, in the billions. And I'm going to explain the little tree profiles here that you see in just a minute. Ancestry, 8 billion. FamilySearch, just above 1 billion. So Findmypast is the one of the 4 sites that has not yet made their trees publicly searchable. You can build a tree on the site, and I anticipate that they will eventually make that searchable, but at this point it's not. You can't really go out and look at other people's trees yet. MyHeritage has over 2 billion profiles on their site. And again, these numbers might seem a little bit skewed and very different. They might surprise you a little bit. But I'd like to tell you a little bit more about why. Especially, is anybody wondering why FamilySearch is so low? Yes, I think we probably have a FamilySearch loyal crowd here today. Everybody like that? Okay. All right, so let me explain to you the difference between how each of these sites structure their trees. So on Ancestry and MyHeritage, this is also true on Findmypast, but I'm not really profiling that here because you can't search other people's trees. On Ancestry and MyHeritage, every user builds their own individual tree. And you have total control over it. Nobody can come in and change it. And you can set the user profile to be public or private so that either other people can't see your tree or they can. And then if anybody else is going to come in and edit your tree or work on it, you give them permission to do that. So you maintain control of your own individual tree at each of these sites, which some people really, really love. So FamilySearch is a little bit different because they are building a global tree, a community tree. Their goal is to build a database that represents every single person who has ever lived, to honor their existence and their identity by having one single profile for every single person and no more. So what that ends up looking like, let's say that I share a common third great-grandfather with you there, right on the second row. Okay, on FamilySearch, if we both are working on FamilySearch, we're editing the same profile. And I might type something in, and the next day you might look at that and say, I don't think so. And you might go in and change it, and you might put up something that says, this is the reason I think this. And so then there's one profile, and everybody collaborates to work on it. So there's a wide degree of collaboration, which a lot of people really love. Now, over at Ancestry and MyHeritage, those 3 arrows then might represent where my third great-grandfather appears on several trees. So those profiles, they're going to be repetitive, aren't they? They're individual. And the one on the top in the middle that's blotted out or blurred out, that represents one that some tree owner has made private because they're not quite ready to share that tree or they don't want to ever. So that would be the kind of thing that you wouldn't necessarily get to see. So when it comes down to it, the 2 different kinds of trees are about control versus collaboration, although there are collaboration tools on Ancestry and MyHeritage, but they are entirely within your control. And then FamilySearch is much more about collaboration. So it just depends on the kind of tree model that you'd like to work with and how you'd like to do your research. So then the next question about those tree profiles is, well, which websites are going to have trees with my relatives on them? And again, that question can only be answered by yourself as you start to go and look, but there's a couple of things that you can consider. So what about the global diversity of their members and their historical records? I've already talked a little bit about the global diversity of records. When it comes to membership, MyHeritage is the only company that publishes a really cool member map of where their members are throughout the world, and you can go in and click on that and say, well, how many members have you got working in Sweden? How many have you got? And you can bring up the United States, and it breaks it down by state. And so it will show you graphically how many people are working on trees in each of those areas, how many members they have there. So that gives you an idea of the global diversity of their members, and that's something MyHeritage is really proud of, and rightfully so. They do a really good job with that. You can also look at the languages that are supported on each one of these websites. Ancestry supports English, French, German, Italian, Spanish, and Swedish. On top of those ones, FamilySearch also supports Chinese and Japanese, Korean, Portuguese, and Russian. So you've got a lot more diversity of language in there. Findmypast works in English. And MyHeritage, there's not room on the slide to put all of the languages that they represent. You can go in and look at the link in your handout, and that will show you, there's links there to help to take you to the MyHeritage member map, and also you can learn more about the languages that are supported on the site. Because the implication would be, if the members are in these areas, if the languages are supported here, and if the historical records are here, you have a much greater likelihood of finding ancestors on trees at these websites. So the next thing to talk about are DNA profiles. Who's excited about DNA right now? It's really the hot topic. Who is really only here at Rootstock this week because of DNA? That's good. Good for all of you. You have more interest than just DNA. But that's a great starting place to come into family history, especially right now. So DNA profiles on a family history website is a fairly new thing to think about as, well, this is a resource that we care about on the site, but it is. So you can compare your DNA profile to somebody else who has tested, and they'll tell you, well, you appear to be genetically second to fourth cousins. So you share some things and some blood ties in common. And then when you find that out, then you have the tools at these websites that support DNA and family trees. You have the tools often to compare your family trees and to build toward each other. It's a great way to collaborate once you've identified, well, we have a genetic evidence here that we are connected. Now let's find the paper evidence that goes with it and work toward each other. So that's a very exciting development in the genealogy world. Now, when we talk about who's doing DNA on their websites, we have very clear answers. All right, MyHeritage, good for them. They've just gotten started in this late last year. They started allowing people to upload their own DNA samples that were taken elsewhere, and now they're also providing tests. So their DNA pool is growing. To my knowledge, they have not published figures yet of what the size of their DNA database. Ancestry's recently updated theirs. They now have more than 3 million samples in their genetic database, which is very exciting. So this is a fabulous tool, and I look forward to seeing the growth in the industry in this particular area. That has not been identified, though, as a priority for either Findmypast or FamilySearch. So don't go looking for DNA connections on either of those websites. You're not going to find them. When it comes down to cost, again, there's not a real easy apples-to-apples comparison because the subscriptions vary by what they offer. Your handout does have details for all of this, but this is an updated slide. I invite you to use your cameras, your phones, to take an image of that if you care about that, seeing the subscriptions. This was very recently updated, so you're welcome to take a picture of that. As you can see, FamilySearch's is the one that makes it really easy to tell you what the cost is of using their site. It's always free. So then, in alphabetical order, Ancestry.com is going to charge you about $200 for a country-level subscription to the US, and about 300 to a full international access of all of their records for Ancestry.com. Findmypast has an amazing $34.95 annually cost for their US starter package, which is a teaser to get those of us in the US who have roots in the UK to start using their site, build our trees back toward their really strongest record content, and then go deep into what they really offer. So that's a great resource for those who want to start in the US and build back that direction. Full access to the entire site runs about $240 for the year. MyHeritage is the one site that breaks things down just a little bit differently. They started their own life as a family tree website sort of host, and so that's the service that they provided, and only in later years did they start adding historical records to it. So that explains why they have different pricing, so it's more a la carte. So you can sign up that $82.56, and I'm giving all of this in US dollars. You can make the conversions yourselves around the world. That $82 is really about a really good family website, and I'll show you more about what that means in just a minute. And then the $120 access is accessing all of their data or their historical records. You can buy those separately because maybe you just want one or the other, and that would be an annual fee. And if you want the best of everything bundled all together, that's going to run you about $180 for the year. So is anyone having a little bit of sticker shock? A little bit? Okay, give me just a second. So before the rest of you run out of the room saying, I cannot afford this hobby, I'm all done. Don't do that, because free access options are available for each one of these websites. It's worth a little bit of work to get them. As I mentioned, FamilySearch is always free. So that's right there makes it easy to use. There's no excuse to not be accessing the rich content on FamilySearch. There are library editions available of the other 3 websites. And these are going to be available at participating public libraries. I think it's more common in the United States, where I live, to find Ancestry.com than to find Findmypast. And I'm guessing that elsewhere it might be more common to find others. But you can ask your public libraries which ones they host, and whether you need to be there in person to use it at the library, or whether you can log in remotely from your home in the comfort of your own pajamas or however you like to do your research. So you can use these library editions at public libraries that have them. The other place that has them are the FamilySearch or Family History Centers that are located around the world, and these are smaller branch satellite operations of the enormous Family History Library here in Salt Lake City. And the FamilySearch has an arrangement to host the library editions of all 3 of these sites at their FamilySearch centers or Family History Centers. You can use the link in your handout to find the one nearest you. There are a lot of them around the world, and those are wonderful resources. They do tend to have fairly limited hours, so find out about them online and use those as resources where you can access these particular websites for free. Now, there is a caution there. There are going to be some limited tools available to you if you're using the library edition. With the exception of Findmypast, the library editions don't allow you to log in with your own login and password to access your own tree on the site. So you won't have access to connect with other members since you don't have a tree on the site. You don't have access to their automated record hinting that says, we think that your ancestors are in these records, because they don't have your tree there to compare it to. So you're just, when you're working with the library editions, you're Joe Public, and you're going in and doing searches, and you'll find records, but you won't be able to attach them to your own tree on the site while you're using the library edition. So that's something to learn a little bit more about. And there also may be a few collections that might not be available to you as a library user. And this final option is available to all members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints globally. If you have a membership record, then you can register for an LDS-based FamilySearch.org account. And with that account, you can use the partner access link that I've given you in your handout to go and get access to each of these other 3 websites. There are a couple of exclusions from some of them, but those are marvelous resources. If you have that option available to you, there's certainly no reason to not use it. So again, please see your handout for the links you need in order to sign up for those accounts with your LDS-based FamilySearch.org account. All right, now we're going to get into the nitty-gritty of each of these websites. Has anybody thought of some things that they hadn't considered before, and or is anyone paying attention to a site that they haven't paid attention to before? Yeah, we got some of that? Good. I'm going to break it down just a little bit. So I'm going to tell you a couple things about each website, and that's going to be, but first I'm going to tell you what they all offer. So all 4 of these websites have indexed and browse-only historical records on them. Indexed records means that you enter a name in a search box and you get back results of records that match those names. Browse-only records are the kind that they say, well, we haven't extracted the names from those yet. You'll just need to page through them yourself and see if your relative is listed there. Both are really valuable. I'd certainly rather page through it myself online than get on a plane and fly to where those records are and hope I can get access. So it's a valuable tool to have, and all 4 of the websites have browse-only records. So they all have powerful and flexible search interfaces. They all know things like when you enter Bill, you also mean William. When you enter Liz, you also mean Elizabeth. When you enter White, W-H-I-T-E, you also want to see spellings for W-H-Y-T-E. These genealogy websites are focused on genealogy, and they all have very powerful and flexible search tools that will help you find ancestors in them and give you a little bit of flexibility when you're looking. All of them have some automated record hinting on the sites. I think probably the most famous are Ancestry's shaky leaves. And these are hints that they give you if they're looking at your tree and the system thinks that these records over here are a strong match for what's on your tree. All of the sites have those if you have a tree on that website. All of them offer some sort of help or assistance, tutorials, at least on how to use their own site. And most of them take it a few steps further and teach you some research basics so that you'll become a better researcher and more informed. You'll know what it is you're looking at. There's a lot of options on each of these sites to take a look at things like that. So go ahead and see your handout. That's got a lot more description in it, more detail on what's available at each one of these sites. So now I'm going to go into each one of them, and I'm going to tell you a few things. First, I'm going to tell you what I love about each one. Now remember, what I love may not be what you love. What I need may not be what you need, but I've tried to broaden the experience as much as I can and tell you some of the things I love about each site. And then I'd also like to offer you things that you ought to know. And I say that with caution because it's not things I hate. It means the things that might work for me but not for you, or vice versa. So just things you ought to be aware of when you want to go use the site. Let's start with Ancestry.com. Again, I'm going in alphabetical order. I am not showing favoritism here. I get asked all the time, well, which one's your favorite? Come on, you can tell me. You can tell me. I've gotten that several times right before I started. And really the answer is going to be different for me and for you. With Ancestry.com, I'll tell you what I love about it. The site highlights for me, I love its deep record content for the US. I have very deep roots in the United States, and I spend a lot of time looking at these records. It does have the biggest integration of DNA and family trees available in a genealogy website. I find the online tree builder to be easy to use, to be fairly intuitive, and the Member Connect tools I find to be really easy to use and valuable. I get very great responses from people. I find it to be a pretty responsive community. You might not find it the same way, but I really enjoy it. I really like their free online tutorials. They've got a lot that they'll teach you on the site, not just how to use their own site, though they do a good job of that, but there's a lot of other tutorials on the site that will tell you how to be a better researcher, how to find the records you're looking for, how to understand what you're looking at, so that as you go throughout the process, you'll be better informed and you'll do a better job, and quite frankly, you'll have a much less frustrating time and a much more fun time finding your family stories. So another site highlight here is that Ancestry.com does offer a desktop software that you can sync your tree to your desktop for security and privacy, those reasons. I'll talk more about that in a few minutes. They do have that available for purchase from a third-party vendor, and they do have a mobile app for those of you who like to research mobily or at least access your tree when you're out and about. My favorite US record collections, and you can see your handout for specific links to them, are going to be their city directories. They have over 1.5 billion in entries in just the US city directories collection. That's their biggest one. And I love using city directories to help me go from year to year to year to see what my family was doing and where they were. It's a lot of rich data in between those 10-year census gaps. Speaking of the censuses, something else that I love about Ancestry.com is that for the US, they also have the most of the federal special census schedules online. So every 10 years, you see the population schedules. That's the main part of the census that a lot of us look at. But each year since 1820, the government has also taken down additional information about certain types of populations. And sometimes you'll be able to dig into those and learn more about your ancestors. Ancestry.com is a clear leader in having the most of those special federal census schedules available to you online. They have an enormous and growing collection of wills and probate records from around the United States. All 50 states are represented at this point. They don't have full coverage for every time period or county, but I continue to see them adding records to those. And those are fabulous resources for figuring out who's related to who and how. Their Social Security Applications and Claims Index is a mouthful to say, but a joy to use. If you've ever seen the Social Security Death Index, that's the free index, you're probably disappointed in what's in it, aren't you? Names, maybe a birth year, maybe a location. You just don't get a lot of information from that death index. But the Social Security Applications and Claims Index, uniquely at Ancestry.com, provides additional information for about 49 million people, which may include parents' names and detailed birth information. So it's a fantastic resource that you can access to be more confident that the person that you're seeing really is your relative and who their parents are before you pay the $27 or $29 to order their original Social Security application, because that's a little bit of a price jump right there. Another thing I love about the record collections at Ancestry.com for the US, they have a really nice growing collection of US church records. Quaker records, Evangelical Lutheran Church in America, growing body of Methodist records, especially strong in the Midwest. So you don't really think of those as resources in the US sometimes, but there's some really rich records, and Ancestry is curating a lot of those. So see your handout for more on those. Things that you should know. I've already shown you that Ancestry is the most expensive site to use. Something else that I haven't mentioned yet is that they don't focus so much on newspaper content. They do have some newspapers at Ancestry.com, but a lot of the newspaper content that the company might curate, I'm imagining, ends up over at their sister site, newspapers.com, which is not part of the Ancestry.com membership fee that I've shown you. They do have a bigger bundle that includes that, and you can look in your handout for more about that. Family Tree Maker software is not free. You have to purchase it separately, and it does only sync with your tree on Ancestry.com. And as you can see, I'm trying to encourage you to branch out and research separate places, so this starts to become a little bit of a problem. I'll address that a little later in this lecture. So now we're going to talk about FamilySearch, things I love about it, and things I think you ought to know as you're using it. Have I mentioned that FamilySearch is free? I think I have. So FamilySearch is wonderful because it's free and because there's so much there that anyone can access with or without a password or with or without paying. So it does prioritize core genealogical records. They really care most about vital records, censuses, immigration and naturalization documents, things that will help us to build or construct those relationships from generation to generation, add another person to our family trees. The FamilySearch Wiki is unique among all of these 4 websites for its vast educational content. So any users of Wikipedia here? Y'all know Wikipedia and what that does. So the FamilySearch Wiki is a similar sort of setup for the genealogy community. So I'll show you more about that in just a minute. It's a fabulous resource and it's free. I love the catalog at the FamilySearch .org website. So if, let's say you can't find the records you're looking for online anywhere, but you'd like to find out, well, do they exist anywhere? Can I get them from somewhere? The FamilySearch catalog is going to take you a little bit deeper because it takes you to records that are offline. It takes you into the library catalog of the largest genealogy library in the world, here in Salt Lake City, the Family History Library, with its millions of rolls of microfilm and print volumes and other things that are not yet digitized and may never be. So you can go into that catalog and see what records are there. If they're available on microfilm, you can order them to a FamilySearch or participating library near you. And if they're available in print format, you can click into the worldcat.org catalog, which will help you find a book at a participating library that may have interlibrary loan options, since the Family History Library does not lend out print materials. So that catalog is a tremendous resource that can take your research to the next level going offline. It does have great mobile apps for building your tree and for gathering memories. And it offers you options to give back into the genealogy community. And really, this is an industry now. I mentioned some figures earlier in this lecture, but genealogy has always been a community as well. A community of enthusiastic hobbyists who really want to help each other find your family history. And so 2 ways to give back are to collaborate on that global family tree and to participating in indexing projects that FamilySearch sponsors for records around the world. So this is a screenshot of the FamilySearch wiki. If you haven't used it before, I'd like to introduce you to it. It can be your best friend on certain days. So the FamilySearch wiki has a search box right there, and I've just entered Swedish genealogy. Let's see what's there. The results that I see here, there's a category for getting started with Sweden research. Oh, that would be perfect if you're like me. There's a category for Sweden online genealogy records, and there you're going to find links to different websites that are strong in Swedish records. You're going to find then county level or locale level entries, articles about, once you drill down to that most local level, what kinds of records are out there. They're going to describe the records. In many cases, they're going to link to you. Some entries are more complete than others because this is community contributed content. And so some areas have been more fully fleshed out than others on this site. But there are a lot of great resources. You'll find webinars. You'll find language translation tools, word lists of vocabulary, so that when you start looking in those Swedish records, you'll understand the words you're seeing. I don't speak Swedish. How in the world am I going to read that records? Well, here's a list of the most common words you'll find. So here in the wiki is where you can get some marvelous education, teach yourself, learn from others how to research in a new place, in a new language, in a new time period, or in a new record type that you've never really looked at before. So when I talk about my favorite collections on FamilySearch, I'm going to have to mostly speak in generalities here, because they are many of the same records that you'll find at some of the other websites, as I talked about before with the record sharing partnerships, but the advantage here being that they're free. That's not entirely true. They do have some things that are exclusive to their own site. I particularly love the strong focus on these core genealogical records. And boy, when I'm trying to get back to the next generation, you better believe I'm at FamilySearch looking to see what they have. Their civil and church vital records and registrations, their census records, documents for immigrants and naturalization process, for probate, meaning when you die and there's a will and everything's divided up. Those are probate or estate records. I love the geographic diversity at FamilySearch. You really get global here in a way that you don't at the commercial partners, just because they are reaching into less developed areas of the world and to other regions of the world that may be perfectly well developed but not have a strong genealogy market there yet, as identified by the other 3 partners. One record collection, though, I will mention specifically here at FamilySearch, and that's at the very bottom. And this slide is unique. I just added it recently, so it didn't make it into your handout. You're welcome to take a picture of it if you'd like to. FamilySearch has an enormous collection of obituaries that have been indexed at Genealogy Bank, which is a historical newspaper website. It is a subscription-only website. We're not talking about that place today because we're focusing on our big 4 genealogy sites. but FamilySearch is at least pointing you to what's over there so that you'll know about it, which is a fantastic resource. And obituaries at digitized newspaper sites can, of course, be searched by optical character recognition or this sort of automated search process, but oftentimes you'll only find about 60% of what you're looking for accurately. And indexing those obituaries has taken that accuracy level clear up into the high 90s. And so you can be really confident that what you find there is going to be a lot more accurate. You might look and say, well, if these obituaries only go back to 1980, how is that helpful? Well, what do obituaries say? They're going to say who that person's parents were or where they were born. They're going to reach back into history. So oftentimes it might reach even 2 generations or more back into history. And so you will learn more than what happened before 1980, I promise, in an obituary. So that's a valuable collection as far as I'm concerned. Things that I think you should know about FamilySearch that you may consider pluses or you may consider minuses. The community tree format specifically. Some people are very frustrated when others change what they enter. Yeah, I'm hearing a little bit of agreement there. But does it help to understand the collaborative model? I'll take questions at the end. Hopefully it helps you to understand what it is they're trying to accomplish when they do have that collaborative model, and there are times that it can be really valuable. So uploading a tree to the site also does take a little bit of time, so give yourself a little time if you go over there and start to upload a tree, because they're going to ask you to compare the people that are in your tree to the rep profiles they already have online so that they can merge them, if that's appropriate. And you can't, on the site, download your entire tree, because if the goal is to connect to the whole world, that would be a really big tree, wouldn't it? So you'd have to look to a third-party vendor to do something like that. There are tools available for that, to download your tree from FamilySearch. That's not something I'll get into today. The other things that I think you should know about FamilySearch, as I mentioned, they have not made it a priority to have DNA testing or tools there, or to host newspaper content, directories, or yearbooks, although they do have a strong digital books collection. At this point, you have to search it in a separate part of the site, so that's an additional step to remember, but it is there, and there are some great books there, and those may overlap a little bit. You might find some old directories or yearbooks and things there. FamilySearch does not any longer have a branded desktop software, but the third-party software Roots Magic has a long-standing relationship with FamilySearch, and they are award winners for being compatible with what you're doing on FamilySearch. So let's talk about Findmypast for just a minute here, the things that I love and the things I think you ought to know. It's deep, deep coverage again for England, Scotland, Wales, Ireland. They've got that great budget-friendly US starter package. I particularly love Findmypast's free tutorials. It's not just about how to use the website, but it's about how to understand the records, because they know that we're coming to a place many times that we don't know the records that are kept here. They've got some fresh videos. They're new and easy to watch, great information in them. I do like their tutorials. Of the 4 sites that we're talking about today, they are strongest for unique digitized newspaper content. So if you're looking for newspaper stories about ancestors of British heritage, Irish, or in the US, they've got exclusive millions of pages from the British archives with lots of great information on British and Irish newspapers. And then they also are the only one of the 4 sites with an active access to the newspaper archives historical newspaper database that's really strongest for here in the US. And that's the kind of database that you can search separately at a library near you that has a participating subscription, but it's really nice to be able to search that through Findmypast as well. So that is particularly strong. This is the only website that offers pay-as-you-go access. You can actually purchase credits very inexpensively. So if you go into the site and you only want to see 1 or 2 records, you can purchase inexpensively those credits and then go view those records. Then you have permanent access to those records, and it's easy. So it's a done deal that way. You can look in your handout for more information about that. As far as my favorite collections over at Findmypast, I can't help but start with their enormous and growing collection of parish records for England and Ireland, and recently announced here, yesterday, they've made a deal with the Vatican to have digitized approximately 100 million Catholic parish records, which are incredibly valuable. I'm really looking forward to that as they develop that. They've already got some going. I think the Archdiocese of Philadelphia, Boston, some of these others are already going, and they've got more in the pipeline. So if you have Catholic ancestors, pay attention to that. So their newspaper collections, I already mentioned. For Irish research before the famine, they go really deep because there's a lot of record loss, and it's really hard to do Irish research sometimes. They've worked really hard to source unique and interesting records that will tell you at least something. I've seen dog licenses on this site. So passenger lists, they have a growing collection of US marriage records. And then the last thing that I'd like to talk about is PERSI. PERSI is not a person, PERSI is an acronym. Has anybody here used it before? I'm so glad. Good, PERSI is a largely undiscovered resource that I want you to know about. PERSI is a subject index of all of the old historical and genealogical periodicals out there. So going back into the 1800s, there have been lots of little newsletters and society journals and historical journals and publications that are these serials or periodicals. And there may be an article about the little town or the cemetery or the church, a transcription of the cemetery or the church records, or of all kinds of things that may mention your family. But because you don't know anything about that little journal, you'd never find it. That's where PERSI comes in. Findmypast is the host of PERSI, and they are, so you can go into PERSI and search for, this is a subject index, not an every name index, so if you've got, let's say, those little church records from that little tiny town, that might have the minister's name on it, but not necessarily, it's not going to have every person's name who was indexed in that little journal article, but it will tell you, it will index it by the name of the church, by the locale, by maybe the name of the parish priest, or any other identifying names that will help you get to that and know that it's your ancestors. So this is a fantastic resource when you're looking deeper and wider and trying to find more about them that may have already been published somewhere. And what's wonderful about PERSI, as you can see, the last letter is an I. It's an index, so it's just going to give you bibliographic information. But Findmypast has made it a priority to also go out and try to get digitized copies of as many of those articles as they can and attach them to these indexed entries. So it's not there for everything yet. It's not even there for most things yet. But I very regularly see their announcements of what journal titles or years they've updated content to the site. So increasingly, you'll also find some digitized articles behind that index as well. So that's a fabulous resource from Findmypast. Things that I think you ought to know. As I already mentioned, you can build your tree there, but you can't search other people's yet. And if you're all about privacy, then you don't even care. So they don't have DNA testing or tools yet there. Their geographic focus is very tight on the UK and the former British Empire, but again, so it's kind of an opt-in or an opt-out depending on where your roots are from or what roots you uncover and need to look there for. Their automated record hinting is the youngest and the most limited. They don't search quite as widely across the site when they're looking at matches, potential matches to your tree. But it is the kind of thing that you use those hints, and then of course you search yourself for the rest of the site, which is true for each one of the sites. Don't just rely on hints and think they're telling you everything that's on the site that might match. Always run searches yourself. There is no companion desktop software or mobile app for Findmypast, so that's just not been something that they've developed yet. So the last site that I'd like to talk about before I wrap up with a couple of global tips for all of you is MyHeritage, things that I love and things I think that you ought to know. As I've already mentioned, they're particularly strong in their geographic diversity and your ability to make cousin connections. I love them for that. I love them for their social networking tools. I'll show you their family website platform in just a minute, because every person who registers there, whether they're a free user or a subscribing user that's paying, all have access to being assigned a unique URL, a unique website that lets you build your own family website with your tree on it and with more information about your tree that then you can share with your relatives, and they don't need a membership either to come in and look at it. I love their search and their hinting technologies. They are particularly strong and particularly accurate, and they translate across many languages. And in fact, if I know that there are records on this one site that I haven't been able to find, I might go to MyHeritage next and then try their search interface because it's so good. And they're going to find a little bit more. So that's something that I really love about them. I'm excited that they've got DNA testing going, that's pretty new, and they're integrating that with the trees. That's new and developing. And they do have free desktop software that you can download from the site, whether you're a paying member or not. It's called Family Tree Builder, and you can sync your online tree to your tree on your desktop for security and privacy and all those reasons. They do have a mobile app as well. Okay, so this is what it looks like, this family website, and I've privacy protected things so that you don't all suddenly have my family members' birth dates. But this is what it looks like when you send someone a link to your site. They can come in and see a welcome screen that looks like this, and you'll see you can customize your welcome message, put a picture there, put a couple pictures there. There's a neat calendar that you'll see over on the right that says upcoming events. MyHeritage actually populates that for you with the birthdays and anniversaries of all your living relatives, so that you can see who's got a birthday or an anniversary coming up, and you'll never miss one again if you're paying attention. You can also go in and add custom events to that family calendar and then share it in that format, so that if you have a family reunion or a wedding or some other kind of gathering coming up, you can talk about it here. This is a place where you can invite your relatives, even those with no interest in genealogy at all, to come in and put pictures that they'd like to share with the family, and you can tag those pictures. So it's more like a social networking environment where I'm going to tag this picture with 5 people in it with 5 names that then get linked to the family tree. So then if I go over to the family tree and pull up that one individual's profile, all the pictures they're tagged in will show there, which I think is a really neat feature. It integrates some things. So the family website is really neat. Things that I think that you ought to know about when you're using MyHeritage. I find that its record coverage for many areas is not as strong or as unique as at other places, but as I mentioned earlier, sometimes its search technologies can make up for that. Its online education focuses more on how to use the site and not so much on how to become a better researcher. So the subscription options that are a la carte for the family tree or family website over here, and the historical record access here, some people will consider a real plus, and others will find a little confusing. It just depends on your priorities there. You can, at this point, upload your DNA from other sites, which for you might be a real plus, or you might say, well, I've already looked in the DNA pools at other websites. I want to see more unique data that's only been tested here. So it just depends on what your interests and priorities are there. And its desktop software, similar to Ancestry.com, only syncs with your tree on MyHeritage. It doesn't sync with your tree that you might have at any other place. So I want to give you a few take-home tips here. I've crammed a lot into your brains the last little while, and I'd like to back up just a little bit, take a breath, and talk to you about a master strategy that you'll take home with you. So really, keep all 4 of these in mind. So raise your hand if you really have come up with some new ideas for what sites you're gonna look at. Maybe later today, maybe next week, maybe whatever. Right here in the front row, 4th from the end, you're right here with the red jacket on your lap. Why don't you come and tell us something that you've learned today? So what's something that you're going to take with you from here that you're kind of excited that you didn't know before you walked into this room?
Well, I wasn't aware of the, which one did Scotland?
Findmypast.
Findmypast.
Uh-huh.
So sorry.
You're good.
I'm emotional. I will be researching a family member that disappears here. His tombstone says he's in Glasgow, Scotland. And so I'm really excited because I haven't tried the other sites.
Okay.
Pretty much I focus on Ancestry and FamilySearch. So I'm excited to go to a company that will help me find Scotland.
That's great. Thank you so much. I would like to send you with something. Come here. Come here. You're not done. I have a thank you for you because it was very brave of you to come up and say that for me. So I'm sending with her today, this is courtesy of Louise Cooke's Genealogy Gems, a copy of the unofficial Ancestry.com workbook. So I know you're going to Findmypast. Sorry, I'm giving you Ancestry, but I think
love them too.
it sounds like that this will be well used.
Yeah,
Thank you so much. So this slide is also exclusive to this lecture today because I'm not putting it in print because the answers to these questions change very quickly. Okay, so if somebody today, right this minute, asks me, where should I first go to do this? This is what I'm going to tell them. And it's not the only answer, it's just the first answer that's going to come out of my mouth. If they say, I want to go trace my roots for free, I'm going to say start at FamilySearch because everything there is free. If they say, I want to take a DNA test, I'm probably going to say start with Ancestry.com because their data pool is so much richer at this point. If they say, I'd like to search for my family stories in newspapers in the US, the UK, and Ireland, I'm going to say start with Findmypast. If they say, I want a place where my family can come and explore and share their heritage, I'm going to say start with that free family website or a premium version of it at MyHeritage.com. And if they say, I'd like to find my ancestors in historical records, I'm going to say, good luck, go look around and find what you need, because that's really what you need to do. Everybody's heritage is unique. So the last thing I'll leave you with is the idea that when you're growing this family tree online, I've mentioned several times about syncing this online tree to the tree on your desktop software. This is something that we teach over at Louise Cooke's Genealogy Gems. She's a leader and innovator in the technology end of the genealogy education world. And what she really recommends to people is go ahead, grow all kinds of branches of your family tree online at all the different websites. When you do a research this session, go ahead and attach records to them and grow those trees because that brings the hinting, that brings the cousin connection. It facilitates your research online, which is fabulous. But keep your roots at home. And what she means by that is your master family tree. Keep it to yourself. Especially as you're starting to research from multiple sites, you want to be able to pull from multiple areas and not be stuck only syncing to one site. You want to maintain ownership, security, control over your tree, because nobody cares about it as much as you do. As fabulous as each of these websites are, they do have the opportunity to have loss or go out of business or close, and then you need your data. So as long as you've got proper backup on your own computer, take control of your own trees. So go on over to genealogygems.com/family-tree, as I've given you in your syllabus and also here, and you can learn more about that and the software that Lisa most often recommends for interfacing with all 4 sites. She recommends Roots Magic because it already has the ability to go back and forth between 3 of the 4 sites, and a full service integration with Ancestry.com for searching and for syncing your tree is coming very, very soon. So learn more here at Roots Tech. We have a lot more to teach you. At 4 o'clock here, right away, here over in the vendor hall, we have a presentation on masteringancestry.com by the author of the book we just handed out. You can stop by and do that. If you want to get a sense of this lecture again, I will be repeating the core of it tomorrow morning over at 10:15 at booth 1039. Where you can come and you definitely can come and ask me questions over there. I'm a lot more available than my ability to answer questions is a lot better than here. So there's a lot here to learn at Roots Tech. We have some fabulous guides to help you with each of these websites, that unofficial Ancestry.com workbook. We've got an unofficial guide to FamilySearch. We've got a MyHeritage cheat sheet, which is on sale for only $5 and can really get you going on that free family website. And then we have tools to help you test over at Ancestry DNA. We do not sell the test kits, but we sell you cheat sheets on getting started testing there, and specifically on testing with Ancestry DNA. So find us at genealogygems.com. You can also, if you're watching remotely or if you don't get over to our booth today and would like some of those resources, you can shop for them here on our site. If you're kind of a beginner and you'd like a little bit of hand-holding through the process of researching your genealogy, come to genealogygems.com and go under Start Here where it says Beginning Genealogy, and we'll start walking you through the process. We have a free podcast, step-by-step series, more than 40 episodes that take you from the very beginning, whether you're a brand new beginner or whether you'd like to do a little bit of a do-over with your education because you've realized how much you haven't done right so far. So that's a tremendous resource that we share with people. We have ongoing podcasts that are really wonderful, where we interview guests that can help you with expert research tips and strategies, and also, of course, with inspiring family stories and success stories that can keep you going. So find us on Facebook if you'd like to. And please, before you leave today, please rate this lecture. If you go into your app and you can give me stars under that little clipboard there, that really helps FamilySearch to know which topics they most want to have back, again, what people are interested in learning, and how well I did as a presenter. So please go in and rate this lecture. Your rating really helps so much. Thank you.